It's pretty well established that subscription costs are just going to keep on rising because why wouldn't they be? They already have a massive user base, and why not just squeeze like at least like $1 more every other year from every single user, which you know accumulates when you have like a large headcount. But it doesn't have to be this way, and I think more and more people are realizing it nowadays when you have shit like Sony killing physical media, which was a pretty massive blow, not just on gaming but also on entertainment and just ownership in general in this day and age. And realistically speaking, I think all media is going to be digital. Like it's pretty unavoidable. But if we're going this all digital route, then why not own it? Why not have a non-DRM'd copy of the music, the movies, the games that you like? And that's kind of what I want to lead into Navidrome with. So Navidrome is a self-hosted music server solution that I've been using since I think 2021 or somewhere around that time. It's been a part of my daily life for a very long time, and I'm a very happy user. So there's a bit of a testimonial, a bit of a sort of what you're getting into, what you can get out of Navidrome nowadays, and why you should be using it, and more importantly, why you should be curating your own collection of digital media that you own. And Sony or Spotify or whoever it is, they're not going to reach in and either yank that shit away like they did with the 550 plus movies that they recently did with Studio Canal, or just increase the heat on the boiling frog with the subscription costs. So I think Navidrome is like a really good way to start stepping away from that. If you go to the site and scroll a little bit down, you'll see there's a bunch of bullet points on why you should be using Navidrome, and that goes hand in hand with why I would suggest using it over something like Jellyfin, which I see recommended quite a lot for music, which I don't know how good that would be long term when you have like a massive library. I mean, Jellyfin struggles with my curated movie and TV collection on my NAS, and it's not even that big of a library, but Jellyfin is a pretty heavy app. And if you have like a massive music library like I happen to have, then it does accumulate. But Navidrome handles that perfectly well. I mean, it's literally a selling point here. And there's a recent update on Navidrome that allows to have multiple sub-libraries within a single server instance. And I'll show that off a little bit in a bit. But Navidrome is super lightweight, and it's based on existing technology, the Subsonic API specifically. So Subsonic, I'm pretty sure, was a similar solution, like a music streaming server solution, but has been discontinued over the years. But because it had a pretty open API, a lot of applications ended up being developed for it, which were in the form of clients that you can use on different operating systems and computers and mobile devices. Someday you can even host as Docker containers and make accessible over a web interface. And Navidrome leverages that, and you have a massive selection of applications. So you don't have to necessarily interact with the web interface that you have here. If I head on over to my Debian server, which is where I put in most of my Docker containers, I can go to Docker Navidrome and then Docker Compose, and this is pretty much all there is to it in terms of spinning up a Docker Navidrome container, and it's really not that difficult. It's the most difficult part in self-hosting your own music is curating it and making it accessible over the internet, which is like a one and done thing. I mentioned earlier that Navidrome now has the ability to create to manage multiple different libraries within a single server instance, which was not a thing back when I first started using it. This was a pretty big issue because the way I went around that was creating multiple containers, multiple Navidrome, and I think I was playing around with Aersonic at the time, multiple of those instances, and it does add up in resource usage. But Navidrome nowadays has the ability to manage multiple libraries. So it's super nice if you like to compartmentalize your music library into like little sections, like I do here. And as you can see, I do have a pretty significantly sized library. It's not in the terabytes. It's not like some shit you'd see on r/music hoarder, but it's it's pretty big to me. It feels pretty expansive to me, and Navidrome handles that like a champ. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of different clients that you can be using for Navidrome, and my personal recommendation on desktop is Phation, which is a GPL3 licensed client for Navidrome, as well as Jellyfin, any open subsonic thing like AirSonic, as well as Plex. So it's available on all major operating systems, as well as a Docker container you can spin up and make available as a web UI, because I think this is a web application, like a web native application. I'm not exactly sure. But for being a web thing, it runs pretty smooth. It works super well. It's very intuitive to navigate. And I would say it's probably the most featureful out of all these clients, the Navidrome clients. It certainly is, like, I think the most used one from what I've been gathering online. And something worth noting is that on desktop, it also has an MPV backend, so you get the highest possible quality if you want to like skip the transcoding stage on Navidrome, because this is something Navidrome also does. It allows you to transcode stuff on the fly. So, for example, if you're on mobile and you don't want to stream an entire FLAC file, which could be like somewhere between 15 to 30 megs or something like that. Opus 128, even Opus 120 is a bit overkill. You can go to Opus 96 and it'd be perfectly fine. But it allows you to transcode stuff, and on Phation, you can stream FLACs directly in the highest possible quality. So it also sounds really good, is what I'm trying to say here. Something that is super important when starting to make a digital library of your own files that you curate is having appropriate metadata. And on Navidrome, this is especially important because how else would the library be working in terms of searchability and usability? And the most recommended metadata source is MusicBrainz, which, as a matter of fact, you can also just grab the entire database and run it on your own hardware if you feel like it. So that's another thing. If you want to go for complete self-hosting, it's another thing that you can do. But MusicBrainz is pretty complete. I mean, there's some releases missing, but adding them to the library, to the database is not that hard, and I would recommend doing that. It helps down the line a lot of people, and it's just a generally nice thing to do. But yeah, metadata is super important, and you should be taking care of it. I know people do it manually with MP3 tag and that sort of shit, and it's kind of silly because MusicBrainz offers their own tagger called MusicBrainz Picard, which uses the MusicBrainz database metadata for tagging audio files. So it ensures that the files are tagged correctly according to what's in the database, and it's also like a very helpful thing for whenever you want to add a release. You can automate it, or not automate it, I guess, make it a bit easier because it autofills some of the data already in for you before you submit it. So I would say just MP3 tag is probably like a last case scenario thing. If you're on Linux, you can use puddle tag, which is a good alternative substitute to MP3 tag. But if you want to have like the most accurate metadata, use Picard. And if you really want to get into the weeds of automating and making your library more uniform in terms of hierarchical file structure, Beats is probably the way to go. Now it's a bit, I guess, a bit more complicated to set up. It's not that difficult, but it's certainly a bit more involved to set up. And my Beats configuration looks a little bit like this. You know, it's not that much, but it requires a bit of trial and error. But once you set it up, then you can have a very uniform looking library that looks a bit like this, the way I have it. And it does all the file hierarchical structuring for you, so you don't have to think about it, so long as the metadata is on MusicBrainz, because Beats also uses the MusicBrainz database for its metadata querying and sourcing. So please contribute to MusicBrainz, for the love of God, is what I'm trying to say here. On the mobile side of things, here is my Pixel 6a with Graphene OS. So no Google Play in sight, but my client of choice here is Symfonium, which I would say is certainly on the level of Phasian in terms of being feature complete, and it works super well. It's super intuitive to use once you set it up. There's a lot of customization options, but the con of it being that it's a paid application that is not free and open source, but the developer is open to the application being used on stuff that doesn't have Google Play services. So it's an option worth looking into. And I do remember trying Tempus. What's it called? Yes, Tempus. So this is a free and open source one that is available on F-Droid, and from what little I've used it, it gets the job done. It's perfectly fine. It's not like you have to spend money to get like a working baseline experience on mobile for Navidrome and Subsonic and stuff like that. But I would say if you're able to spring for Symfonium, then go for it. Even if you're not like a Navidrome user, you can add different providers here. I even tried adding WebDAV for Copy Party, which was a bit of a fun experiment, and it seemed to work fine. It was a bit clunky because it was like a lot of files, but you have a lot of options, and I think Symfonium, I really wish it was free and open source, but it's a really good application that is, I think, worth your money, just like PowerAmp. I think it's the PowerAmp of streaming, Navidrome streaming client on mobile. In terms of going on about acquiring your music, in my opinion, the most underrated way to do it is with CDs. CDs are super abundant, and yeah, as you can see, they're really not expensive. Here's a Basinski CD I have, 8. Here's a RDJ self-titled, 7. They're really not expensive, and it also helps support local record stores if you have any in your area. So you can rip these super easily. There's all sorts of different tools for all like different operating systems. I have a dedicated ThinkPad R500 as a ripping station that runs Windows 7 with exact audio copy and X-Review for DVDs and that sort of stuff. But I think I'll talk about that some other time. What I'm saying is acquiring music is super easy, and if it's not on CD, if it's like a vinyl exclusive like this here, which as far as I know, never had a digital release, but I went out of my way to do a vinyl rip, and I submitted it to MusicBrainz. So it's another option. Music is super easy to acquire. Whether it's the legal, buying your own physical media and ripping it, or going the high seas with sites that I'm not allowed to name, but they're super abundant, and they also provide perfect quality of like audio. But if you want to go down the route where not only do you buy and own the media, but you also want to support the artists in question, then you can go to Bandcamp, for example, which I think is the most ubiquitous or the most famous online storefront where you can just buy flags of different artists, and I think it's probably the first avenue that you should be looking at if it's something that's digital only. You also have specialty stores like Bleep and Boomcat, which I haven't used personally, but Bleep, I can testify for it. It's super well. You can grab your digital releases here. They're non-DRM files, and you can just freely toss them into your music libraries. And it's like another really good way to go on about this. If you're a Plex user and you're used to stuff like sonic analysis, which is a way to analyze a track's sonic qualities and create instant mixes with tracks that sound similar in terms of their sonic qualities, You have that option on Navidrome nowadays as well. It's through Audio Muse. I'm not even going to pronounce this section because it's such a fucking buzzword. But Audio Muse is a really cool project. It integrates with Navidrome, Jellyfin, and Lyrion, MB, even Plex, I guess. Cool. But Audio Muse is, a thing you can deploy on Docker, and you can assign your library, your server, and then select libraries to scan through, which takes quite a while depending on your hardware. It's very computationally heavy, but you have the ability to spin it up on multiple different devices. So I spun up a worker instance on my desktop, on my former school laptop, and stuff like that to sort of pitch in some work for my poor ThinkCenter 7th gen Intel server instance, which was struggling with the initial run of AudioMuse. AudioMuse is really cool once you get it up and running because you can select track in Phasian or Symfonium. I can only speak for those two clients because I don't really use any other ones, but you can select track radio and play, and it's going to spin up a playlist with similarly sounding tracks based on the one that you started the track radio with. And if you have like a pretty big library with a lot of different data that AudioMuse can source its little database from, it can create some very seamlessly flowing playlists. So to me, it's nice when I have like a large library, and I find myself listening to pretty much the same few albums and not really exploring it. So it's a good opportunity to always like take a listen at the rest of your library that way. I think in terms of stuff that I wanted to yap about, I'm kind of done. There's not much else that I want to add other than Navidrome is just a really cool piece of software that I enjoy using and I have a lot of respect for, because not only is it a good gateway to get into home labbing and being your own service provider and self-hosting your own services, it's also just a genuinely reliable piece of software that's been part of my daily life since 2021, and I really enjoy using it. And I would heavily recommend it to anyone who is looking into, being your own media provider and curator and sort of cutting the cord on a lot of these stupid subscriptions that are just, funneling you with more and more slop, with more and more, political drivel. It's it should be about the music, and I feel like nowadays it's a bit of the magic is gone from those mainstream services. So yeah, own your media because no one else is going to do it for you. And when you have the opportunity, support your record stores, rip your own physical media, toss it in, Navidrome, and be your own provider. Thanks for watching.